Let me say this again. Hey everybody, this is Element Reptile here. Welcome to my channel. Today, right now, I'm going to check out something that was. I'm right now live streaming as well, so uh, let's please. So I'm probably gonna add this in the comments. But I'm gonna say is I want to check out something that so like I said before once, but I want to see about cultures. It's time for something more interesting, more settled to understand what's going on in this country. We have been ripping our asses apart for too long, and I really didn't understand the whole continuity of this country. I'm like, yo, like, how would be a happy good neighbor when I'm on another place? I've been to many states. I've been to the Carolinas, mostly the East Coast, actually. So my bad. Mostly the East Coast, but it doesn't matter. I don't think that matters. Today we're gonna be watching the whole video of what of 12 nations, not 50 states, which refers to cultural regions and the cultural kind of aspect of things that actually makes sense here in America. Well, United States, because America is the tipping part of Antarctica down to the tipping penis tip to the toe tip under of Argentina. But let's get check to it, bro. Let's get check to it.
One nation is how the United States refers to itself, but in reality, this isn't correct. In fact, within the United States, there are 12 competing regions that have their own cultures, values, and priorities. And these regions really act more like independent nations under a single flag. So what are...
Okay, so they're like, so he's saying there's different cultures, like I said earlier. He said that, it depends on just because there are 50 states, that doesn't mean they're the same. That's just the first start of things. But I'm guessing. That's just a guess. I gotta see more of it.
The 12 nations of America. The United States has long been viewed as a single nation, a union of states under one flag and one constitution. But beneath the surface lies something deeper. America isn't one nation, it's 12. I'm not the first person to notice this either. Journalist Colin Woodard originally proposed 11 American nations in his book, American Nations. But what I've done is expanded his nations to reflect two major changes: the inclusion of Hawaii as its own unique nation, and the creation of a Spanish Caribbean nation that includes both southern Florida and Puerto Rico.
Yes. This one is very, very, very accurate. When I had spent some time in Miami, I was thinking, like, what's happening, right? When I was in Miami, and of course I grew up in Miami. I had a childhood in Miami, so the environment was really tropical, was super tropical. Baby, it was super tropical. The culture there was, as many people say, it was like it was capital of the world. It was the Latino capital of the world, right? It was, it crossed the bridge from the United States down to all of America Latina, and the Caribbeans too. Many Caribbeans, Haitians, Jamaicans, Bahamians, Barbados, Dominicans, Boricuas, Dominicans, Cubans, a lot of that, all congested into that southern part of Florida. You get to see that. A lot of Cubans. Remember, Miami is widely known by its population as a Cuban capital nation because of, Cuba's so close to Miami. Sorry. Cuba is so close to Miami. And, but you can check it right there. I mean, right there, if you see that country right there, it's already connected. So yeah, that is very true.
both areas that are distinct from the nearby regions. So with that said, let's get to the nations. If you were to look at a cultural map of the United States, you'd see something very different from the one you learned in school. Instead of state lines, you'd see 12 fluid, overlapping territories stretching across traditional borders and sometimes even national ones. But for this video, we're going to focus just on the nations within the United States, starting in the Northeast. Rooted in New England and stretching into upstate New York, Michigan, Wisconsin, and parts of Minnesota is the nation of Yankeedom. On a map, it hugs the northeastern part of the US and most of the Great Lakes. Centered around New York City and parts of northern New Jersey and the Hudson Valley is the nation of New Netherlands. Moving south in central Pennsylvania and heading westward across Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and parts of Iowa and Missouri is the Midlands. Found along the Chesapeake Bay in eastern Virginia and parts of Maryland and North Carolina is the nation of Tidewater. It resembles the remnant of old colonies along the Atlantic. West of Tidewater is Greater Appalachia, a broad, rugged band that stretches from the hills of western Pennsylvania down through West Virginia, eastern Kentucky and Tennessee, into Arkansas and parts of Texas. Moving south once more and dominating much of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and parts of Louisiana and Texas is the Deep South. In the far south and consisting of
Yeah, the Deep South. I don't believe so.
southern Florida, especially Miami, and Puerto Rico, is the Spanish Caribbean nation.
Spanish Caribbean. Yeah, it's exactly that. Like I said again, like he said, he pointed out so accurately on that part of Miami. Miami is not the Buck South. I tell my friends, Miami's not the Bucks. Like that, this is way too south. The environment there, we say, oh, this is the Buck South. This is the Deep South. No, it isn't. It is not the Deep South. I'm here in the state of Ocala right now. In the city of in this town I'm in right now. If every time I go back to Miami, I realize just how different the vibe is. Or whenever I actually, because during my time, I love going to Orlando, right? Orlando, between Miami and Ocala is like north of the border. Believe it or not, I consider my favorite city, Orlando, as like the Mexican border that cuts the South and the 305 culture. Although South Florida is much deeper than that. South Florida, when I soon came to realize these cultures, because every time I go out of Miami, like I wind up in Washington, D.C., I wind up in New York, I wind up in the Carolinas, I wind up in Georgia, I go to Ecuador, I go to Spain, I go to actual Caribbean. You know, it is, like he said, it is very, very different. You go to New York, the culture there is very different than Chicago.
In between the Gulf of Mexico and the Deep South nation is the nation of New France. Moving
I have to go there.
westward, spanning from Southern California and Arizona across New Mexico and into West Texas is the nation of El Norte. North of El Norte and covering a vast swath of interior California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, parts of western Texas and the Dakotas, and much of mainland Alaska is the Far West nation.
No, Alaska is Arctic. That is, no. Alaska is, I'm sorry. Alaska is its own. Sorry. Alaska is its own nation. I think so.
In the far north and west is the left coast, a narrow but powerful strip along the Pacific, stretching from the San Francisco Bay Area up through Portland and Seattle and into the Alaska archipelago.
Don't they say left coast? That's the Pacific coast. Like I've yet to hit the Pacific coast. But I think it's that don't the people say Pacific coast as the Cascadia? Pacific Northwest.
And finally, thousands of miles away from the mainland is the nation of Hawaii.
Hawaii.
These 12 nations have different politics,
Loho.
cultures, values, and social trends, and they don't follow state boundaries, which were often arbitrarily made at the time and didn't really factor in how actual cultures might develop. For this reason, the American nations expand beyond in ways that we're not really accustomed to. Which brings us to the geography and history of each nation.
All right.
Where people settled and how they came to shape the land are at the heart of how each nation came to be. The cultural lines that define these 12 nations don't align with modern state borders, because that's not how nations are actually formed. Look at Europe, for example. Each country looks organic rather than the artificial straight lines that make up the individual states. This is because they follow linguistic and cultural borders that were formed over hundreds of years. Because of this, each nation in the United States similarly grew from a distinct historic root, which was influenced by its surrounding landscape. Yankeedom emerged from the Puritan colonies of New England. Settlers arrived seeking a religious utopia and quickly organized around towns, churches, and schools. The geography, rocky soil, dense forests, and harsh winters wasn't ideal for large plantations, but perfect for close-knit, self-sufficient communities. This created a legacy of town halls, universities, and civic institutions that still defines the region today, even as far west as the state of Minnesota. Meanwhile,
Minnesota. So there's that one state out there. I think it's called Maine. Is that part of Yankeedom? I've also heard that there's some good cliffs in the Atlantic coast, like you see out of like some sort of Assassin's Creed game. I want to check that out, like East Coast, but with mountain cliffs and stuff. That's I heard is pretty cool.
New Netherlands was originally founded by the Dutch as a commercial trading post and grew in the sheltered natural harbor around modern-day New York City.
Yeah, New York City. So New York City has, when I was in New York City, there were some buildings I seen that were very historic that had, which I didn't know at the time, but when I drive past by it, it became, it was, I've learned a bit of it, and it was about, there were some, Dutch.
Because of its unique geography, New Netherlands encouraged maritime trade, immigration, and urban density. The Dutch legacy of religious tolerance, multiculturalism, and commerce remains central to its character today. And then there's the Midlands, with its rolling hills, fertile farmland, and navigable rivers. The Midlands were settled by English Quakers and German immigrants who envisioned a pluralistic, agrarian, middle-class society, primarily focused on the colony of Pennsylvania, but encompassing places as far west as Missouri and Iowa.
And, of course, the Trail of Tears, the attackings of the Native Americans, and the enslavement.
Its geography lent itself to family farms, and its central location helped it evolve into the political swing region of the United States. Tidewater developed along the Chesapeake Bay and eastern North Carolina. Its wide, navigable rivers and access to the Atlantic made it ideal for plantation agriculture and transatlantic trade. This region was settled by English gentry, and its flat coastal plains supported a hierarchical society based on tobacco, enslavement, and exporting agriculture for wealth. The rugged Appalachian Mountains, of course, define Greater Appalachia. This nation is isolated and heavily forested in the east, but rich in natural resources.
And Tennessee, man, hey, Dollywood is I've never been to Dollywood, but I've heard Dollywood is crazy. I want to go to Dollywood. And probably imagine throwing a rave set in Dollywood. Shit.
Originally settled by Scot-Irish frontiersmen, Greater Appalachia developed a fiercely independent culture shaped by subsistence farming and clan loyalty. The mountains both
clans. Oh, he means the Ku Klux Klan. All right.
Isolated the region and protected its traditions. This rough and tough rural mentality extended as far west as northern Texas. Formed by slaveholding elites in the south, the Deep South's flat, humid coastal plains and river deltas perfect for cotton and sugar plantations. This geography enabled a brutal plantation economy supported by enslavement, which in turn gave it its distinct African American culture today. Its original aristocratic culture, racial caste system, and economic inequality can be traced back to this colonial foundation. Southern Florida and Puerto Rico form the Spanish Caribbean nation. This region is tropical, coastal, and deeply influenced by Caribbean migration and trade, and the Spanish language, Spanish colonial roots, Catholicism, and African Caribbean culture foundation. Southern Florida and Puerto Rico form.
I don't really believe that Central Florida is part of, you know, the steep South. As to our perspective, I feel like
The Spanish Caribbean nation. This region is tropical, coastal, and deeply influenced by Caribbean migration and trade, and the Spanish language, Spanish colonial roots, Catholicism, and African Caribbean cultural influences are strong here.
the irony is that the first ever American city, it's a Spanish colonial territory. Hilariously, that not many people in the United States kind of think of it. When they come down to Florida, they said like the first actual colony was here in Florida. So the legacy of America started in Florida, even though it's in St. Augustine, and this guy kind of thinks that that Jackson, like St. August, all the places north of Florida, is in the deep South. I say no, because the Spanish history in Florida, La Floridad, Teja, right, means flowery, land of the flowers. So it is straight up Spanish. It's straight up Spanish. Even though you're talking about and I think that what this guy is talking about basically is environment. That's this guy talking about. It's just environment. It's not really the cultural region, but it's environment. Maybe I'm wrong too, because I don't know. I never actually even gone to the West. I spent some time in Chicago, but I didn't know nothing about Chicago. I am stupid. I am cooked. But when it comes to Florida, I'm talking about Florida in general. It has more Spanish history, just in the coastlines.
Especially in cities like Miami and San Juan. This geography makes it the prime gateway between the US and Latin America. New France is tucked geographically at the mouth of the Mississippi, making it unusually small, but united by its French heritage. The Mississippi River and bayous enabled trade and settlement by the French and later Creoles. Because of this historic settlement pattern, Catholicism, language, and cuisine make it distinct from the Deep South, spanning deserts, mountains, and
You're not gonna talk about them Cajun, boy? You're not finna gonna talk about them Cajun, no? You finna respect them Creole. You talk about the Creole, but you finna let out a Cajun, no? Nah, you be tripping now, boy. You'll not be tripping now.
and cuisine make it distinct from the Deep South. To Texas and into southern Colorado is El Norte. Because of its geographic location, the Spanish were actually the first Europeans here, establishing missions, presidios, and ranches long before English settlers arrived on the East Coast. Its borderland identity is shaped by bilingualism, Catholicism, and resilience to an overwhelmingly arid environment. Dominated by the Rocky Mountains?
Yes, I feel like too, the Spanish, like he said again, it's been the Spanish did first arrive to North America. They say that El Norte is the Los Angeles. No, that's not true. I think if you go up all the way up in California, the Spanish took over a whole good northern part of California. I think like Central California, then almost to the Pacific Northwest. They were about to take the Pacific Northwest, but they didn't.
Coast. Its borderland identity is shaped by bilingualism, Catholicism, and resilience to an overwhelmingly arid environment.
Yes, an overwhelming environment. And the best thing that they can represent in that environment is Edgars, and Hectors with Mexican hats chopping over the border, like me.
Dominated by the Rocky Mountains, the Great Basin deserts, and Arctic tundras of Alaska,
that is such bullshit. I'm sorry, that's such bullshit. I don't think this guy has it accurate. Alaska is a territory. I think Alaska is such a territory. There's no way.
Far West was the last American region to be settled in large numbers. Its harsh environment required massive government infrastructure, from dams and railroads to military bases and eventual airports, to support human settlements. Even today, it's a land of low population and high federal presence because the federal government actually owns most
Federal prisons.
of its land. The
God damn, federal prisons. The fuck? Yo, hold up. I thought we have like the biggest prisons, most prisoners, man. We have alligator Alcatraz. You didn't tell me that Alaska has most prisons. But I don't really believe, like, I don't know, bro. Honestly, this guy, to believe this guy says that Alaska is like the far west, that is total BS. Alaska, this part of Alaska is not part of this. Either way, in general, Alaska, it's its own nation. It is its own nation. It is close. Look how close to Russia that Alaska is. And look at the plains right there. Alaska is literally the broken half of the Bering landmass. You really think that Alaska is the far west? Nah, you tripping, bro. Ese man no tiene no. Ese man no sabe. Ese man no sabe, brother.
The Great
Because look how close that is. Look at that little part right here. Dude, that is deeply close to Russia. Deeply close to Russia.
Washington coast is where rugged mountains meet the mighty Pacific Ocean.
Okay, the left coast.
And encompass the coastal areas of Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and the Alaskan Panhandle.
I ain't gonna lie.
Settled first by Yankees and later by global Washington, and encompass the coastal areas of Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and the Alaskan Panhandle. Settled first by Yankees and later by global immigrants, its culture fuses Eastern reformism with Western libertarianism, and its geography, temperate climate, seismic activity, fertile valleys, and vast forests encouraged experimentation, progressivism, and innovation. And finally, as in experimentation, progressivism, and innovation.
I love to see that. Actually, I've always dreamed of going to the West Coast. I always dream about how would it look like the Pacific Northwest. I've seen so many videos of Oregon and parks there. My mom went there. My mother went to Washington to see a friend over there, and she went to places because in the Pacific Northwest, and it was said it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful, like the landmass, the everything, like the environment. It's so green. Sometimes it has this specific pine, this blue green ambience. It's just not that you don't not see here in Florida. I love mountains. I want to see more mountains. My brother right now is seeing mountains. The only mountains I'm seeing is just this rolling hills of Claremont. I already want to see good mountains, bigger mountains. The Pacific side is so beautiful. You know, it's so beautiful. Isn't that the place where Twilight is? And on top of that, there's another name they say, Cascadia.
And finally, as an isolated volcanic archipelago, Hawaii's geography is unlike any other U.S. region. Settled by Polynesians and later transformed by American missionaries and Asian laborers, its culture reflects Pacific traditions, Asian fusion, and deep ties to the ocean. The island's isolation helped preserve indigenous identity even amid colonization.
Hey, give a shout out to Jason Momoa's Chief of War.
Meaning Hawaiian is a common language to this day. Geography and history is embedded within each nation, and each continues to evolve because of these lines today.
Knowledge is trapped in people's heads. Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Scribe. We're on a mission to make
The United States has always struggled to define what it is: a melting pot, a patchwork, a union, an experiment. But one thing is increasingly clear: it has never truly been one single nation. It's a federation of cultures, worldviews, and identities that have coexisted, sometimes uneasily, under the same flag. That reality becomes easier to see when you stop thinking in terms of states or party lines and start thinking in terms of deep-rooted cultural regions. Take a look at the way Americans behave politically as an example. National elections often hinge on so-called swing states. But when you zoom in closer, it's the swing regions within those states that actually move the needle. The blue cities of Yankeedom clash with the red rural counties of Greater Appalachia, sometimes within the same state. Southern Florida historically voted nothing like the Florida Panhandle, though that trend has changed recently due to shifting political ideologies of Cuban migrants and a growing retiree population. And far northern California has little in common with Los Angeles. It's this cultural geography that tells the real story. These nations are not based on modern trends or media bubbles. They're grounded in centuries of history, and these differences aren't superficial either. They explain why
Hey, yeah, but little kids, the Ku Klux Klan. Hey, man.
Americans often seem to be speaking past each other, locked in a cultural Cold War. The fights over guns, healthcare, education, and religion aren't just political, they're geographic. The left coast and the far west may both be part of California, but one is progressive and coastal with a desire to restrict gun rights and advance universal healthcare, while the other is libertarian and inland with a passion for low taxes and less government intervention in their lives.
I always feel like that, hey, yo,
If you guys have the audacity to do this, here's the other chance. If only people in California can just go to the eastern sides of, of the state.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going to the eastern sides of the United States, of California. It is simple. It's cheaper. Why make it this expensive? I know the land is rich. Don't get too close to the coast. Or go to a small town in the coast where the region is very isolated. That can work. I'm wrong. I'm super wrong.
Meanwhile, El Norte sees the border not as a dividing line, but as a zone of shared identity with Mexico, contrasted with Greater Appalachia, which sees the border as something that needs to be hardened and made less permeable.
Basically he's saying, shoot all beaners. That's what the culture's saying.
Meanwhile, the Spanish Caribbean, anchored in places like Miami and San Juan, functions with a bilingual, bicultural, Spanish-inspired rhythm distinct from anything in the Deep South or Yankeedom. None of this is just a cultural quirk. It affects the governance of each nation. Trying to craft one-size-fits-all federal policy in a country this fragmented is like trying to sew a quilt from 12 different fabrics using a single thread. You see it in the endless political gridlock, in states suing the federal government over mandates, in regions going their own way on issues like abortion, climate, and immigration. The culture wars aren't a glitch in the system, they're the system playing out across an invisible map that very few people acknowledge. But when you do acknowledge that map and see the United States as these 12 nations, it explains so much. It explains why San Francisco, California and Los Angeles, California look and feel so different, or why New Orleans, Louisiana is so different from Mobile, Alabama, despite their geographic proximity.
Oh, the land of incest. Oh, sweet home Alabama by Forrest Gump. Okay, I'm gonna shut the fuck up already.
It explains why some states feel like they're being governed by outsiders. It also explains why unity is hard and why division comes so easily. The idea of the United States as a single people has always been more aspiration than reality. What holds the country together isn't shared culture, but shared infrastructure. Roads, currency, federal programs, a military. But culturally and politically,
And school shootings, depression, social media. Everything that should have been left alone if corporations didn't need to screw things up and market it on our depression. God damn, man.
the US operates more like a loosely bound confederation. Not red and blue, but a mosaic of nations that coexist, cooperate, compete, and sometimes clash. Understanding the country through this lens doesn't solve the problems, but it at least makes them less intimidating. In fact, it offers a way to reframe political conflict not as irrational partisanship, but as the natural friction between fundamentally different regional identities. And so, with all that said, if these nations did actually exist, what would they look like today? Which would be most populous, and which would be the wealthiest? If the United States were to break apart, not just politically, but culturally and geographically, it probably wouldn't fracture into red and blue states.
No.
It would likely splinter along the lines of these 12 nations, or something close to it. During that time, some
I still call it bullshit with Alaska. I still call absolute bullshit with Alaska being the far west and the part of the Rocky Mountains. The Rocky Mountains is way distant than Alaska. Alaska is straight up the Arctic. This guy, like I said it again, this guy probably has miscalculated the history of Florida and completely got Alaska wrong. My opinion. This guy completely got Alaska wrong. This, you know, I'm sorry. Alaska is way more about the Arctic and the Pacific Northwest, and on that perhaps. But having them as part of the far west, no. The Rocky Mountains is the far west, as it says, the left coast, or as what they're supposed to say over there, Cascadia, or the Pacific Northwest. That's its own vibe. That's accurate. Florida, the first colonial state will be St. Augustine, and so on and so on.
Some would thrive, others would struggle, and a few would quickly seek alliances with the others to stay afloat. Yankeedom, with a population of nearly 58 million and a median income close to $57,000, would be a powerful nation. It would inherit much of the intellectual, educational, and technological infrastructure of the Northeast and the Great Lakes. With elite universities, corporate headquarters, and deep ties to Canada and Western Europe, Yankeedom would function as a progressive, internationally oriented republic. Yankeedom would find a natural ally in the left coast, a smaller nation in terms of population, but wealthier per and higher in internal division. Culturally rugged and libertarian leaning, it might resist federal.
Hey, libertarian bro, that place is Confederate loving. That place embrace the Confederacy. They live libertarian. They also they do some Until Dawn shit over there, bro. I don't think so, man. They're proud. They are proud patriots out there. They go yeah doggy. I was there in Tennessee. They don't play country music together all the time. They hate country music.
Style unity altogether, opting instead for a loosely aligned federation or even full decentralization. After all, how do you tie Appalachia to Oklahoma and northern Texas? Culturally, it would likely have deep ties to the far west, another vast and sparsely populated nation, and could lead to a rural alliance focused on resource extraction, states' rights, and small government. The Deep South, with 45 million people and a median income below $44,000, would likely emerge as a conservative powerhouse with strong emphasis on tradition, religion, and business-friendly policies. Its historic distrust of centralized government might persist, but its internal cohesion would make it a formidable, independent entity. It would also be the region with the highest African American population, perhaps shifting it politically in ways not expected. It could easily ally itself with Greater Appalachia and parts of the far west on cultural issues, forming a socially conservative coalition. El Norte would be uniquely positioned. With over 34 million people, a relatively young population, and a bilingual workforce, it could become a bridge not just culturally, but economically, between North and Central America. Its economic strength would come from cross-border trade, agriculture, and a strong labor ethic. El Norte would likely partner with
It'll be widely known as Edgars too, and Cholos, and including the Chicano movement too. Oh man, oh my, Hector, Edgar, you have defined the Chicano culture of the El Norte of California. Now we all look up to you, bro.
the Spanish-speaking Spanish Caribbean, which includes southern Florida and Puerto Rico. Though separated by geography, their shared language, religion, and cultural foundations could build a pan-Caribbean coalition with strong ties to Latin America and Spain. New Netherlands, anchored by New York City, with strong ties to Latin America and Spain.
More likely, because most of the origin stories come from Spain. It is a known fact. The most of its origin stories come from Spain, and but they guess the Spanish travel that far.
New Netherlands, anchored by New York City, would be small in size, but a global giant in finance, media, and international diplomacy. With the highest population density, high income, and global reach, it would likely function more like a city-state such as Singapore. It would also have close ties to Yankeedom, though due to its status as a global center for finance and trade, it may wish to remain politically neutral overall. Speaking of smaller nations, Tidewater, with a relatively small and aging population, might find itself squeezed between the ambitions of its neighbors. Historically aristocratic and now a region of retirees, it might depend on alliances with either the Deep South or New Netherlands for economic and political stability. Straddling the cultural middle
The Midlands, I was there.
would face a hard choice. Politically moderate with about 37 million people and middling income, it could swing either way, joining the Yankeedom Left Coast Progressive Coalition or partnering with the Deep South or Greater Appalachia for pragmatic reasons.
It's been said that the Midwest and like in the Midlands, it's been said that there's still sundown towns that are still alive. Those who don't know about sundown towns, is a time in America where if you are of color, where if you're black, brown, red, yellow, you should get out before the sun sets or they finally lynch you. That's basic as that. And people think that that was during the Jim Crow eras of the 1950s. No, it's still going on. The sundown towns still go on. There is one sundown town in the state of Florida too. It's called Jay. They think that.
Its fate might hinge on leadership and external pressure. Of all regions, the Midlands are the most likely to swing between the different nations. New France, with only about 3 million people, might also struggle to see where it fits in. New France would likely align with the Deep South, though culturally it stands apart in language, cuisine, and worldview. Of all nations, New France would leave the biggest question mark for how it would evolve as a nation. Finally, Hawaii would be small, but uniquely positioned geopolitically. Its high income and strong ties to Asia and the Pacific would make it a diplomatic and military keystone in the Pacific. While isolated, it could remain neutral, non-aligned, or form a Pacific alliance with the left coast. In raw numbers, the largest nations by population would be Greater Appalachia, Yankeedom, and the Deep South, while the smallest would be Hawaii, New France, and the Spanish Caribbean. The largest by area size would be the Far West, Greater Appalachia, and Yankeedom, while the smallest would be New Netherlands, Hawaii, and the Spanish Caribbean. The wealthiest per capita would be New Netherlands, Hawaii, and the left coast, while the poorest would be the Spanish Caribbean, the Deep South, and El Norte.
Nah. This guy has it wrong. What? That's the rich coast. Have you even been to Miami, sir? You have not been to Miami. The Spanish Caribbean is super rich. I think this guy has it wrong on the norte. Now, the wealth per capita, like the Deep South, the poorest nation, yeah. On California side, the southern side, yes. Because Skid Row and some death call thieves, I don't know. But Spanish Caribbean? Miami? You never been to Miami, sir. I'm sorry. What? Nah.
Finally, the youngest would be El Norte, New France, and New Netherlands, while the oldest would be Hawaii, Yankeedom, and the Spanish Caribbean. If the United States were to divide, it wouldn't do so evenly. Power would consolidate around urban cores, ports, and cultural hubs, just like it does with every nation. Border regions might become flashpoints or bridges. Long simmering tensions could ignite or be resolved. But what's clear is this: a split United States wouldn't just be 50 smaller pieces. It would more likely become 12 vastly different nations, each with its own priorities, challenges, and sense of identity. And in some ways, it already is. The US is a single country, of course, but culturally, it is broken up into different nations. And honestly, you can say the same for basically every country that exists today. Speaking of different countries, this week I'm exploring the ancient ruins of the Khmer Empire's capital city, Angkor. So if that sounds interesting to you,
yeah, nah. In that part, it's in my opinion, this guy he was accurate with the the culture of southern Florida. That's one hand, and including Hawaii and California, El Norte, and all that stuff. On one hand, yes. But there's a good half of it that's very wrong. First things first. First things first. Alaska is not the far west. I don't know what was he smoking about Alaska. Alaska is its separate cultural nation. It is not the far west. You're probably confusing Montana, far west of Montana, the Rocky Mountains, Dakota. Dakota has also somewhat of a culture, or maybe a similar, probably Fargo. Maybe that's such a stereotype. My bad. But Alaska, it's not. Florida is known for Spanish. Like the first colony in Florida is Spain. It is St. Augustine, and it's Spanish. It's a Spanish colony. That's right, and that's the reason why they call it Florida, because La Floridad, because it was the Spanish that came there. So it's more on the Spanish side, though I understand their behalf. In the modern times, I guess it's the deep south, cotton picking deep south. But then there's Norte, which at first I thought this guy was that he would have that he got it right with Texas, but he also and New Mexico. But I was kind of more like unsure when he was talking about California, because the California is the left. They say it's the left coast and all that good stuff, right? But he kind of fumbled it a bit with that. He actually fumbled. What mostly I think he fumbled is the poorest part. Hawaii is rich because of this territory and land, and with the millionaires go there. Yes, probably yes. The trade and the visitations of the Pacific East of Asia. But to say that Miami's poor, you have not been to Miami, sir. You've not been to the 305. I'm sorry. I don't know what you're smoking. I don't know what you're smoking. And Alaska is the Arctic. The Alaska is, yes, part of the Pacific Northwest, but the Arctic. Libertarian-wise on the Appalachians, maybe, yeah, because the area is kind of isolated. But no. But the other hand of it, nah, dog. I kind of believe that Appalachia, a good part of Appalachia, bro, is red, man. Filthy red. Filthy red. So the left coast today is now, they call it the woke coast for the most stupidest of reasons. But that is all today, man. I feel like this guy was there, but I think he fumbled it with the whole culture states. But anyways, I think that's much today. I'm gonna cut a lot of this, so I'm gonna cut a lot of this. But anyways, that's it today. We hope you guys enjoy this. Like, subscribe to my channel, Element Reptile, and we'll see each other. Y'all bless, baby.